So what brought you specifically into the wine industry? Because I know you said that you were pre-med before.
I didn't want to go to med school,
Mhm.
and I took a job at a winery because I was really thinking at the end of I would just be summertime help,
Mhm.
and then by the end of it, okay, like move to a big city, kind of figure it out, do all that sort of stuff. But the winery that I was at, it just so happened that they were looking for like full time help, and I stayed on just because I was like, all right, this gives me more time to think about it. And then one thing led to another, and then the pandemic hit and everything, and really a lot of time to like gave everybody a lot of time to really think what they wanted to do.
Mhm.
And I said, with my background, I can produce wine. I just need to take some classes on wine chemistry and all that. So I took classes through UC Davis
Mm.
out in California, and it was all remote, which was super nice. And just kind of got some skin in the game. Like I want to produce wine. Like this is a really cool job. I think this is amazing. People always ask
Mhm.
me, they're like, people actually do that. Like you make wine for a living, because it's blue collar. It is farming to a core, but the presentation of that farming is it's wine, and it's
Yeah.
elegant, it's beautiful, but it brings so many different walks of life together, which I think that is so unique and cool.
And yeah, and that's good to know because when there's more wineries popping up around here, people are going to be interested in that field. So thank you for
And
that.
I really hope, like, especially like, Michigan State being the agricultural college, but like
Mhm.
other places here, like even if it's just a minor, because I know like I don't believe Michigan State has an enology program,
Not
enology
sure.
viticulture. I know they have a viticulture. I don't know about enology, but if
Mhm.
they get that, that would be super helpful, and it would really be helpful for all the wineries up here to have local people stay in state, because a lot of the colleges
Yeah.
right now are out west. Fresno State, UC Davis, Washington State.
Mhm.
Those are, if you want to like make wine as an undergrad, that's where you got to go. Unfortunately, you can't stay right here.
Mhm.
I guess you could go to Cornell over in New York too, but I think, Michigan, we're on the come up, and I think people are really starting to see that Michigan does great wine, and it is a viable region.
Yeah. That's amazing. What makes the Leelanau Peninsula and Traverse City area climate so favorable for making wine?
So this is what's really cool about the area. It's the big body of water. So a
Mhm.
lot of regions in the whole world, you're either in a warm climate or these cool climates, which we're in right now. It usually has bodies of water, rivers, lakes, and we just happen to have one of the biggest bodies of water in Lake Michigan. And what that does is it really tempers the weather and keeps it very mellow throughout the year. So a lot of that Arctic wind that comes across that really smacks the Great Plains, where they get all the tornadoes in Wisconsin, that gets severe thunderstorms. Lake Michigan really tempers that down, and a lot of times we don't even get those storms here, just because of the microclimate of the water. It just keeps everything pretty mellow. But if you were to go 20 miles inland, like to the east, Kalkaska, Gaylord, they get hit with severe weather. That's just because they do not have that water to really buffer the weather patterns.
Mhm.
So it keeps the temperatures consistent. It keeps the severe weather out, and it keeps it. The other thing is winter kill. So the bodies of water stay about 30 degrees, which insulates the temperature around here. So it actually doesn't get too bitterly cold in the winter, because vines will die at negative 10 degrees. So here, it's usually anywhere from the teens to the 30s. It doesn't
Mhm.
really drop off unless we get a polar vortex. So the climate variability in cool climates, which we are in, which a lot of places are, like Oregon, Washington,
Mhm.
places in France, Italy, vintage years, which is the year that the grapes are grown, those are huge, because cool climates, it can change so much year to year. Whereas warm climates like Napa Valley, Sonoma, they just have very consistent weather patterns,
Mhm.
hot from March until harvest. Whereas here in Michigan, you just never really know what you get in the spring, summer, fall. So the weather patterns recently have been pretty consistent, where we get stretches of very warm weather, and it's been longer. The seasons have just been they've been starting earlier, and they've been starting longer, which allows grapes to mature and ripen more evenly. And it's allowing us to really get into planting varietals that people didn't think would be possible to grow here. So getting back to what we were talking about
Mm-hmm.
briefly, cool climates dictated completely by the weather patterns. So some years bud break might happen sooner, some years it might happen later. And then the temps, it could be cold and wet, could be super hot and dry, and that's something that you just kind of take into account throughout the whole entire growing season. I mean, at this point, we're starting to strategize, as you can see, like how much fruit we're going to potentially have if everything keeps going the way that we're thinking it is. But I mean, there's still a long way to go. We usually don't harvest until, if it's a really good year, maybe towards the end of September, but usually it's the first week in October is when everything is usually right about where we want it. But until that point, it's just kind of like, well, we have, a bunch of different options of what we can do. And it also is what we need a supply of in the tasting room. So those are always just factors that you're thinking about. And you just kind of have to prepare for whatever Mother Nature gives you at that point, because you can't control it and you just have to kind of take what you're given. Yeah, these right here, these are concrete. So these are fermenters right here. So those are stainless steel tanks, which you mostly do all your whites in, unless it's a barrel white like Chardonnay or Sauvignon Blanc. But like Pinot Gris, Sauvignon Blanc, you can do Chardonnay in there, Riesling, Gewürztraminer. That is usually done in those tanks because it really keeps the bright fruit flavor in there. Whereas barrels, you start getting that wood aspect. But these are super cool. The concrete eggs, these, we mostly do our Chardonnay in here because Chardonnay has a lot of acidity to it, giving it a really tart finish, whereas this will soften that up. So it keeps, it's very refreshing on the back end, but it doesn't have that really tart bite that some people don't like. So these are basically just fermenters, and they act, because it's porous like wood, so it micro-oxygenates as it's fermenting, and that's what softens up the acidity. In addition to, there's the corners of those, the yeast can fall into the corners, which is fine. But this, with it being kind of like an oval, when the yeast falls down, it'll get kicked right back up. So it's more of like a complete fermentation.
Have you experienced any changes in the quality of wines, and what do you expect in the future?
The qualities have gone up. I feel like everybody in this region, the quality has started to go up, and there's been a lot more investors, winemakers, like they're starting to see that this is a really viable region. Back then, I mean, Michigan was just thought of as fruit wines, cherry wines. And now it's been proven with our little microclimate here in northern Michigan, especially like Traverse City, Leelanau County, even Elk Rapids up to Petoskey and Charlevoix now. It's just a very unique environment that is allowing grapes to get riper, and it's allowing us to really show off like what we can do in northern Michigan. So I mean, if this trajectory continues, I don't see any reason that the quality it's just gonna keep getting better.
Would Traverse City still have its cherry festival in the years to come, or do you think that could potentially change to like a grape festival?
I think I loved this question actually, because I like growing up here, I was like, Cherry Fest it's been a big deal since growing up, and it's only gotten bigger. And I think just because of the tradition and the history of Traverse City being the cherry capital of the world, I can't see the Cherry Fest going anywhere. It might get smaller, but I don't see it going anywhere. But I think if this wine region takes off, I could see there becoming like a grape festival, like maybe a harvest festival that happens later in the year, like September, October. And that I could really see that happening, because there's a lot of events that go on at the wineries during the fall time to bring people in. And so I could see, if we become recognized as a region that produces fine wine, that I could see us having a festival for